take 4. Testing my little home studio setup. So, we're going to talk about the associate, which is commonly called the reformer, type 1. It's called the reformer because the type 1 is very talented at seeing the world through a certain lens where they can see where things aren't fitting. They're not right. They don't feel comfortable. They cause an ill-at-ease feeling to be in relationship with it the way it is. And so they move themselves. They relate differently in how they behave and how they push something away or pull something close to themselves and how they're identifying with it, relating with it, in order to reform it, in order to make it better, make it a better experience, not only for themselves, but for everybody, because relationships are interconnected, right? And if your view is of the world and you're looking to make it a better world, that better world isn't just for me. Different ones will probably have more of a just for themselves, self-protective kind of qualities, while as others might be more focused on making it better for more other people. And that might be the difference between when we're looking at the move into 2 versus the move into 9. I'm not sure how people feel about that. It looks like my system kind of does something weird with that, but that's beside the point right now. Associate. Why do I call it the associate? I call it the associate rather than the reformer because what's happening, in my opinion, is that the lens of the essential essence of point 1, this one essence, the archetypal temperament, which temperaments are prior to birth. We come into the world with them. So they happen prior to, and then are kind of a foundation from which we build our personality and our character and our lives around. They come from prior to nurturing. They're already there. And you can't predict them. You never know what your kid's going to have. And that's the life they're going to lead. The essential pattern is this idea that the temperament is going to continue because of the way it looks at the world. Because of the innate way it is, it will pick up certain things more. This is why certain temperaments will be more sensitive to certain kinds of trauma. So this system looks at that. It looks in the world in this sense of a pattern that's going to be repeated, and that type of trauma is going to be a sensitivity for them for their whole life because that's what they pay attention to. It matters to them. And it has since they were born. It's their mission, their destiny, their fate. These kind of words, those can be a little deterministic. So I don't tend to have a strong deterministic. You can always choose not to really engage in your pattern. You can try to do a different pattern. There's nothing stopping us. That's our free will, right? From making the choices to try and do something differently. And that's kind of what's beautiful about human consciousness, is that we can defy fate or destiny, but that doesn't stop the fact that we seem to have these pressures, the fact that we come into the world with a temperament, the way that problems keep reoccurring for us to have to face again and again and again, which the reformer is always going to have this talent, this innate ability to see what needs to be improved or what could be improved. They'll have this idealism that is a gift, but also will cause a certain wounding to happen again and again and again. As an associate, it's what I'm associating with. So association is like a relationship with my identity. So who I am and how I am in relationship with the world around me, I can control that. That there is a sense of control. I can control how I move through the world. I can control who I relate with, how I relate with it. I can do that. So the point 1 is always using this relationship with the world, this association, in how they move themselves to try and reform, to create, because this is why we would be anchored in sexual. I am one side and the world is the other. And when we come together, we create the next moment for both of us. We infect both of our beings with each other by accepting the other into it. And a new world is created. A new me is created. the new order is created. Every instance that we come together in contact in relation with anything, not even just people. And so this hyper awareness of the becoming, of what the product is, the synthesis is of a coming together in relationship, in association, is why I call them the associate. It covers the same thing as the reformer. It just, for me, makes it a little bit more neutral and more in tune with what the actual behavior of the lens is, and that's the association quality, with the paying attention to how relationships are affecting themselves because they're the subject of their experience, and also being able to see how it might be ill affecting others, that they are going to be quick to try and help the subjective experiences of others in a similar way to how type 2 does that. But it's type 2 will be called the provider, and so type 2 takes it upon themselves to provide for others, whereas the associate is just using themselves in their relationship and how they associate with something in order to kind of create change, that there's that birth of change that comes forth, which then they have to deal with and relate with that too, associate with that. This kind of gets into my narrative polarity, the dialectic, the dialogue, the duality and synthesis that occurs, and that, the principle that I hold most true about the Enneagram, the reason I love the Enneagram, the reason I still use wings, is because I really hold to the belief that each point is a synthesis of the surrounding points. So the wings, the dialogue between 9 and 2, how those come together is what equates 1. That's what 1 is, in essence, is the relationship between 9 and 2. And so it also is, 1 also is the synthesis between 6 and 8. So the synthesis between 6 and 8, so 0.7, that's the growth of 1. So we see that synthesis is a huge part of what makes 1 1. And between 5 and 3, because 4 is the disintegration point of 1. So ultimately, 1 is the expression. This is the lens, right? This is the expression, the lens, the way of experiencing the world. The story is told through this dialogue between 9 and 2, which their growth points or their integration points and their disintegration points are also part of what makes them them. But they're not. That's not as developed as it is on the points that we're talking about, which is where we include the wings on the integration and disintegration on 1. I feel like I'm rambling similar to my writing right now. I've talked about this better in the previous drafts. Oh well. I'm going to call it quits there. So I will share this video that may or may not get watched because it's 9 minutes long, and y'all let me know if talking about these things makes them more understandable than writing about them.